And so I think beyond that, what he was trying to get at, and he did go into some detail, was that we have to rethink our method of linear thought and how we approach the production business cycle, and consider how we as consumers can impact that model. And on the one hand, it seems kind of depressing because it seems like there's not much impact we can have, as you'll see in a moment. But through reuse, we'll actually have a lot more impact than you think. So what he ended up saying was, currently, in the last 25 years, we had a global economy that was powered by overconsumption in the United States. Overconsumption in the United States was funded by excess debt. At some point, that debt got too big, the economy's crashed, and it didn't work anymore. And the argument he was making was, we have to have a new driver of the global economy. And the point he was making is that new driver needs to be the green economy. So renewable resources, renewable energy sources, and tie that all into the production cycle. And the problem, and what I think before me the two of you had mentioned, is we tend to think you extract things from Mother Nature, you produce it, you consume it, you throw it in a big hole. This is sort of this linear thought pattern that we have, that there's one way of using things and getting rid of them, and the waste that you create afterwards. And we need to turn that linear line of production and consumption into a true production cycle where you're producing things with renewable resources, you're using renewable energy to do it, so that's completely sustainable. William McDonough talks about waste being a design flaw. And so basically by addressing the design flaw, we can operate more sustainably. And a big way we can do that and affect this model, since we're not big presidents of companies, we're not George Soros, is through reuse. I'll be getting to that a little bit more in a second. So in addition to, we can't just gadget or technology work our way out of this one. We have to rethink things. We can't just keep sticking things on the same metaphorical VW and keep driving in the same direction. So there's some thought as well as technology involved in the solution. So, okay, this is the part where you have to wake up because I'm going to ask you a question. The waste pyramid, or iceberg, as it may be, there's industrial waste and there's the waste that we create as citizens and consumers. How much do you think our waste as consumers is of the total? Is it a third, a fourth, half?
1/70.
1/70th, a little teeny bit. 2/3.
80%.
80%. So you got the full spectrum here, and we tend to think, so my waste, if I recycle, and I can recycle half my stuff, you've got half as much waste in the world, right? Unfortunately, the formula doesn't quite work. The waste that we all create, if we ended all our waste tomorrow, 98% of the waste would still be out there. The rest of that waste is being created as industrial waste and making all the things that we buy. So, if you recycle 100% tomorrow, still 90% of the waste will be there. And so how do we as consumers get at that 98%? That really stinks, It's kind of, we talk about having the balls, but you kind of are, have no effect whatsoever at that point when it's all being driven by production and industry. But the way we can get at the rest of that 98% is through reuse. And FreeCycle is one of the tools in your arsenal to get at that 98%. Here's an example I give you. If you reuse a sofa, FreeCycle is a good way to do that. You post it on FreeCycle, someone picks up the ratty old sofa. You're not just keeping 100 pounds out of the landfill. You're keeping at least 20 times that in raw materials from being used to make a new sofa. So you got water, you got the cotton, you got the pesticides, you got the herbicides, you got all the diesel to deliver the sofa. So not only are you keeping 100 pounds out of the landfill, you're keeping 20 times that at a minimum from being extracted from Mother Nature in that linear thought pattern from being used. And that's a ton. So the next time you're thinking of throwing out the brush and bulky trash, that old sofa, somebody can use it. And there's an easy way to find that somebody using FreeCycle. I actually had an old broken telescope. And someone posted to FreeCycle they were looking for an old telescope and they knew how to fix broken telescopes. So there's someone out there for just about anything. And my wife has always made it quite clear to me that FreeCycle to me means giving things away. Even the ones I had tips on 12 telephone poles that I thought would make a great back fence, she didn't let me do it. So, all right. So, kind of wrapping things up a bit here, I have a first public announcement to make about FreeCycle. Up until this last month, you went to freecycle.org, you saw a page like that, and that would link to the various local Yahoo groups across the world, and you would post your item, your soap or whatever, to the Yahoo group, or you'd ask for your soap or whatever it was to a Yahoo group, and get a bunch of emails. Tucson was one of the first groups in the world where we've now launched it directly on our website. You don't have to join a Yahoo group anymore, and it automatically builds your post when you want an offer or you want to make a wanted post. And so for the first time, we've made it easier now for people to post directly in a nonprofit environment directly on the website. We've been trying to do it for 4 years, so this is really a big moment for us. So I'll kind of leave you with one close. We're now starting to come around and see things in a beautiful way. But I'll reflect back to another commentator on American society and economy, Henry David Thoreau, who commented that we don't need to lead lives of quiet desperation while things fall apart around us. He said, a man is richer in proportion to the number of things which he can afford to let alone. Thank you so much.
I love being Mrs. Green. Are there questions for any of the panelists? We have actually a little bit of time left, and I know that some of you are eager to talk to these unbelievable treasure troves of information, so we can take some questions or we can break up. Okay, go ahead, sir.
I'd like to address Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming. I enjoy your blog and also, your listening and also the community blog. I want to ask you sort of a detail about kind of a question, because I think that there's a sort of a schizophrenia around this whole topic of sustainability. That we're really in a very consumptive, high-growth culture, and we're all implicated in it. Very few of us have extracted ourselves out of it. And while we're understanding these messages about shifting to a minimal consumption culture and your tools and how to sort of move in that direction, we're facing enormous challenges coming up. And if we see anything happen in the resource or the climate realm that's happening right now in the financial and economic realm, we could see major step function shifts just overnight. And we are going to be trapped in a situation where we're going to have to resolve this schizophrenia real soon. And Dimitri talks about comparing how collapse occurred in the Soviet Union versus how we may respond to collapse. And I'd like you to sort of dig into your cogitations about that, how maybe some suggestions about how we may start preparing for even more dire scenarios and how we link together and help each other.
You're going to throw me a softball, right?
Under the bus.
Yeah, exactly. I think that a lot of people are facing, at the very least, a real economic crisis, and I think that energy and climate issues are going to mean some really tough times for a lot of people ahead. I'm very taken by Dmitry Orlov, who, if you don't know him, he's really quite wonderful, who has this point that, it's much easier to fall out of a first floor window than it is on a fourth floor window. So the lower your energy usage is, that if you find yourself in a crisis, then the easier the adjustment is going to be to the new reality in some ways.